Hi, hello, and welcome. My name is Brian Freestead. This is my game dev live stream. I'm working on a game. It's a platformer, 2D platformer, side-scrolling, and the working title of the game is ChronoPlatformer. Right now I'm working towards my tech demo, hoping to have that out in the next 2 weeks, and in preparation for that, I'm working on one of the big features of the game, which is this day cycle where the day will reset and you're stuck in this Groundhog's Day type situation where if you don't beat all of the bosses, then the day will reset. And some things will stick around, but some things won't. And, yeah. It's been a real pain trying to figure out how to make this work. I was working on this for a while this morning, and I fixed some of the issues I was having last night. I don't really remember where I left off last night, but let me just sort of walk through what I've got going on. So at the top level, there's this main scene, and the main scene has a list of scenes to load at the start. It has a day cycle timer, and then it has a scene loader, which is over here. It's a dynamic scene loader, so eventually it'll load and unload scenes dynamically as you move around the world, but for now it just loads up all of them. And so on the start, we say start day on next frame is true, and the finalizing scene count is 0. There are no scenes that are finalizing right now. So if this is true, down in update, down here, we will print out starting the next day, and then we will start the timer with the day cycle length, and then we will set that to false. And when this timer starts, it fires an event, and different things can listen to that event, but the main scene also listens to that event, and it calls on start of day. It instantiates a new dynamic scene loader with the starting scenes. That will get a new list of the scenes loaded this day, make a new list of the currently loaded scenes. It has a map or a dictionary from all of these. We have all these asynchronous operations for loading and unloading scenes, and so, but they don't have the names of the scenes associated with them. So I have this map here to help with that. And then for each of the starting scenes, we will load it. And load scene is down here. It prints out loading scene, the name of it, and then it starts an asynchronous scene load. And we get the operation here, and we add it to that map. And then we have this function here, load op done, that gets called when that's completed, and then we return it to anything that wants to have that operation as well. And when the load operation is done, we'll get the name out of this map. We will add that name to the list of currently loaded scenes. And then we will remove that operation from the map, from the dictionary, and then we print out that load of that scene is done. When the scene gets loaded up, each scene will have a scene day manager. So on start, it will get the main scene, and then it will check to see if that scene has been loaded yet this day. If it has, then it will just call on scene wake. Otherwise, it will add itself to the list of scenes that have been loaded this day. It will do on start of day all, and then on scene wake. Cool. What's next? So then the timer goes on. Oh, well, let me go down a layer further. So the scene day manager can get a list of all of the end of day handlers on all the objects in the scene. And so on start of day and on scene wake and end of day and scene sleep, we'll just go through the end of day handlers in the scene and call their respective function, which will down here print out what's going on. And this is for each object. And then each object can have multiple different pieces of data, and it does the appropriate file system operations to each of those data depending upon what action is taking place and some characteristics of the data. Okay. Now the timer goes and goes and goes. Right now it's set to 30 seconds. And then when the timer ends, it fires off an event. And that event will trigger this function here on end of day. What we'll do is we'll start by unloading all of the currently open scenes. And this scene loader has a function to do that. And it will return a list of these operations. We'll start that as a coroutine, so we'll say wait until all are unloaded. And we'll give it the list of asynchronous operations. We'll say while that's not done, that function's down here, it's pretty simple. We'll just wait. And then it prints out all scenes unloaded. And then what we do is we are going to reopen all of the scenes that were loaded this day, and we're going to finalize them. Hi, I'm W2 Melvin's dad. Thanks for joining. So when we go to finalize a scene, we're going to increment this value, and then we're going to start this coroutine that says wait for load and end of day, and it takes in the asynchronous operation from loading that scene and then the name of it, and then that's down here. And there will be one of these started, one coroutine started for each scene that was loaded this day. Okay, this function will wait until that asynchronous operation is done, and then it will print that it's done. Maybe I'll put finalize load is done here to clarify where that's happening. And then this bit here searches through the scene to find the scene day manager, and then it will call on end of day all. And then we will unload the scene, wait until that's done, print out, finalize unload is done, and then we'll decrement this. Once all these coroutines have been started, then we'll start this final coroutine called start day after all are finalized. And this one will just wait until this has been decremented back to 0, and then it will set this to true. So once all of the scenes that are open in the day come through and decrement this, then this will do its thing, and we'll do starting next day. It'll start the timer again. On start of day will be called, so the dynamic scene loader will be reinitialized. The scenes loaded this day is cleared. Everything is cleared. And then the scenes are reloaded. So let's look. I ran this. Maybe I'll run it again. We'll get your stuff. Okay, so it says starting next day. It says loading scene sandbox. Load of scene sandbox is done. It says scene sandbox has not been loaded this day. Dynamic player object within the sandbox has its on start of day called. Because it doesn't have any start of day data, it will not attempt to copy that. Then it says on scene awake for that object. And then 30 seconds later, it says unloading scene sandbox. And then we have this gets printed out at the scene level, scene on disable, sandbox scene. It says it's done. Then it says all scenes are unloaded. And then it's going to reload all the scenes that were open that day. It's going to reload the sandbox. It's done. It says finalize load is done. And then we get a call to dynamic player on end of day. And that seems good. Then we begin to unload the scenes again. So that's done. It says sandbox finalize unload is done. And then we start the next day. It reloads it again. It goes through the same pattern. This time it says oh, interesting. Okay, so here, the first time a sandbox scene gets loaded, it says has not been loaded this day. The next time it says it has been loaded this day. Then we start the next day. The first time it gets loaded, it says has not been loaded this day. Again, it's next time it says it has been. And you can see this is repeated a few times now. Every time we get this warning here about the start of day data not existing. So let's go check that out. It's going to be under characters, scriptable data, player data. So we have our kinematic data, we have our health data, and we have our defense data. And of the three of those, it says that the defense data is quantumly entangled. So the defense data, that makes sense that that exists. The kinematic data, I must have manually saved using these buttons here. So I should probably do the same for the health data. But I can't because, shoot. Yeah, I was going to have to figure out a way around that. I think what I can do is I can copy the health data from here. I think that'll be fine. All right, let's open up this defense data. So it says our damage threshold is currently 0. We have no resistances, no vulnerabilities. So what it means that it's quantumly entangled is that if this changes during the day, when the day resets, this data does not reset. So if I were to change this now, say add in a resistance to melee and give him a damage threshold of 2, and then I let the day play out, got to the end of the day, we'll see that that should stick, but something like the position should not stick. Okay. So you see there, the scene reset, the day reset, and the player moved back. So now we can see that the start of day data has been reset. Open it up. So the on-scene sleep here, that's where the data in the persistable object gets saved out to current data so that the current data can get copied at the end of the day. But I don't think on-scene sleep was called. In fact, it doesn't ever seem to have gotten called. But that should get called when this thing is disabled. Let's see if this shows up on scene on disable. Yeah, that seems to happen. let's check out what's going on here. We'll say if EOD handler dot enabled. Let's say if it's not. Then we'll do a debug dot warn. So I think what's going on is when start gets called, we can be assured that everything else has already been enabled. All of the other scenes, or all of the objects in the scene have been enabled because they all have awake get called, and then they all have on enable get called, and then they all have start get called. But by the time that on disable gets called, some of the other objects in the scene may have already been disabled. And if that's the case, then I think this call to it will just do nothing. Oh, it busted because I messed with stuff in the middle of it. Let's retry. Also note we're no longer getting that warning because we have the file now. Okay. Scene on disable. So it should get called at this point after this, right? So to me that, let's see, so let's put in an else here. My thought is that this list is empty. So I kind of want to do debug.log game object.scene get root game objects dot length. Just say number of root game objects. See, I thought that it would catch it because I did this include inactive thing here. Maybe. Maybe this doesn't include inactive things. I don't know. Okay, so when start of day is called, there's 7. When on scene awake is called, there are 7. you are wrong. That's not very nice, Aubergine. They said, please correct me if I'm wrong. My worry is that the other objects in the scene are being destroyed before OnDisable is even being called for this guy. That's not what I would expect. I would expect all of the OnDisables to fire and then all of the OnDestroys to fire. Longest 30 seconds. Okay. So we say we're unloading sandbox. Say help, I'm being destroyed. Scene on disable sandbox. Dang. So what this tells me is that I can't rely on OnDisable and I can't rely on OnScene unloaded. I have to do this before. Okay, here we go. Load, start a day, scene awake, unloading. Object enabled when putting to sleep, dynamic player on scene, sleep. Help, I'm being destroyed, dynamic player. Unloaded scene done, all scenes unloaded. Loading scene sandbox, load done. Finalized load is done, end of day. Unloading. Object enabled when putting to sleep, on scene, sleep. Help, I'm being destroyed, done. Finalized unload is done, starting next day. So now let's try changing this. Wow, look, the start of day data is now changed. Oh, that's a known issue. Okay. It doesn't have to do with the saving system. It has to do with the interaction between the rigid body of the player and the kinematic data. Okay. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna wrap up for tonight. Next time I'll work on a user interface so we can see how much time is left in the day and what portion of the day we've gone through. Okay. Well, thank you for joining. Glad I got it basically working. There's still lots of issues in my head that I know I've got to solve. But I'm pretty pleased that it's doing okay. Thank you. As always, have a nice night. Bye.